Russia continues massive attacks on Ukraine's energy system with UAVs, ballistics. This was followed by emergency power cuts in most regions of the country. What can Ukraine do to respond to Russia's attacks on the energy sector? What would be the most painful blow for the Kremlin? About this, Charter97.media outlet talked to Ukrainian political scientist, professor of the Kiev National Taras Shevchenko University, Petr Oleshchuk. I think that Ukraine, by virtue of its capabilities, is already responding by striking Russian refineries and oil infrastructure in general. Russia is making money on this, and this business is close to Putin directly. In addition, the means that Ukraine has, drones, first of all, are the most effective means of hitting such facilities. Simply because refineries burn well, they can be easily set on fire, even by a small drone. It will burn for a long time. It will be a big damage. Unfortunately, it is much more difficult to hit other facilities in this way. Drones can be used for some pinpoint strikes, for example, against specific enterprises, but in general, their capabilities are limited, he added. Petr Oleshchuk said that Ukraine needs missiles. If it had them, it would be possible to respond more effectively to Russian attacks on the Ukrainian energy sector with symmetrical strikes. Not long ago, OSINT experts published a map of Russian air defense in the network, and now they have pulled all the main defenses to Moscow. There, too, they understand perfectly well that it would have a serious psychological effect on Russia if they were to strike the country's capital. Ukraine is still testing its missiles. It is hard to say when there will be a sufficient number of them, when the AFU will be able to use them fully. The most effective would be strikes on Moscow's power grid, and I think that would be the best investment, simply because when they launch 700 drones and hundreds of missiles each, it's pretty hard to repel them all. If Russia knew that in response to the massive shelling of Ukraine, it would receive an equally massive strike first and foremost on Moscow, I think Putin would think about whether it's worth it or not, he told. Recently in Poland, because of the massive Russian missile attack on Ukraine, they closed the airports in Lublin and Radom to allow for NATO air operations. Could the Russian attacks lead to more serious action by the alliance and Western countries against Moscow? Petr Oleshchuk replied, "So far, Moscow has been brazen and measuring the measure of its capabilities and the measure of NATO's response. For example, during today's attack, missiles flew through Romanian airspace, among other things. That is, Russia is simply using NATO airspace to bypass Ukrainian air defenses. Chernivtsi was struck in a similar manner. Obviously, Russia will continue to use all of this and test the limits of what is possible. Today, a missile flew out, so it seems to be nothing terrible from the point of view of Romania. But tomorrow, it will not fly out. The situation with drones in Poland is repeating itself. There is no doubt that the route through Romania was deliberately laid out, he said. After Putin reported on the successful testing of the new underwater drone Poseidon, the Kremlin's chief blogger, Medvedev, also woke up. On his social media page, the former Russian president decided to praise Poseidon. He first insulted the head of the Belgian Ministry of Defense, then wrote that, unlike the Burevestnik, the Poseidon could be called a doomsday weapon. Medvedev echoed Putin's praise for the successful test of the Poseidon nuclear-powered underwater drone. One social media user decided to leave a comment under Medvedev's post, suggesting testing the Poseidon in Belgium. Then Belgium will disappear. The deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council responded curtly, "That's the whole idea, sir." Medvedev's interlocutor replied, "The Poseidon project is nothing new. It's a modern take on the Soviet T-15 project. At the time, the Kremlin planned to create a powerful torpedo to attack the US coast in the event of war. They were attempting to create a modern submarine to support this torpedo. Putin first mentioned the Poseidon in 2018 during his address to the Federal Assembly. By January 2023, Russian media reported the production of the first set of Poseidon torpedoes for the Belgorod submarine, and recently a war criminal reported a successful test of the Poseidon. Recently, Belgium threatened to wipe Moscow off the face of the earth if the Kremlin decided to attack Brussels. Belgian Defense Minister Theo Franken told De Morgan that if Russia ever decides to attack Brussels, the alliance's response will be immediate and devastating. If Putin strikes the capital of Belgium, he strikes the heart of NATO, and we will raze Moscow to the ground. This is perhaps one of the harshest statements ever made by a Western European leader. Franken emphasized that Western countries should not fear the Kremlin because threats only work on those who yield to them. The Russian embassy in Belgium has already called the minister's statement provocative and irresponsible. However, Franken himself doubts Putin would risk attacking Brussels, as it would be a direct attack on the entire North Atlantic Alliance. Military analysts remind us that NATO's military potential far exceeds Russia's. After 2 years of war against Ukraine, the professional portion of the Russian army has been virtually destroyed, with thousands of tanks and armored vehicles lost. Russia no longer has sufficient equipment even to transport ammunition. Horses and donkeys are increasingly being used at the front. Against this backdrop, the threat to raze Moscow to the ground sounds less like a figure of speech and more like a military technical fact. NATO countries truly have all the capabilities to do this, from high-precision missiles to strategic aviation and nuclear forces. Franken also noted that he is most concerned about Russia's hybrid actions, destabilization, provocations, and incitement on the alliance's eastern borders. The little green men in Estonia who are inciting the Russian-speaking minority against the Nazi regime. Before you know it, they'll annex part of Estonia, he said.